High Commander Vexthor stood before the massive holographic display, his forearms crossed behind his back as he addressed the gathered students. The Lambda 7 chamber, a legendary testing ground within the Galactic Defense Academy, hummed with anticipation. 300 years, he began, his crystalline voice echoing through the amphitheater. For 3 centuries, the Lambda 7 trial has stood unconquered. The finest military minds from 17,000 species have attempted it. All have failed. The assembled students, representing the top 0.001% of military tacticians from across the galaxy, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. All except for 4 humans sitting in the front row, who appeared to be passing notes like academy freshmen. Vexthor's secondary eyes narrowed at this display of casual disrespect, but he continued. The scenario is simple. Breach an impenetrable fortress designed by the ancient Arxtons, the greatest defensive architects our galaxy has ever known. The fortress's AI adapts to every known strategy. Its shields regenerate faster than any weapon can deplete them. Its defensive systems have counters but counters that have counters. The hologram shifted to show the fortress in question. A geometric impossibility of overlapping fields and nested defensive matrices that seemed to hurt the mind if observed too closely. Several students winced and looked away. The current record for survival within the simulation stands at 36 hours, achieved by Graham's strategist Kovacs of the Hive Minds. The average attempt lasts 20 minutes before total failure. You have all requested to attempt this challenge. The waiting list is currently 8 years long. He paused, all 4 eyes focusing on the human quartet in the front row, which makes today's special exhibition attempt all the more unusual. Would Team Terra please step forward? The 4 humans stood with varying degrees of casual grace. Captain Sarah Chen, their appointed leader, wore the standard academy uniform like it was evening wear at a diplomatic function. Beside her, technical specialist Raj Patel fidgeted with what appeared to be a child's puzzle cube. Combat specialist Maya Rodriguez carried herself with the predatory grace of someone who had learned to fight in places where rules were optional. And then there was theoretical specialist James Cooper, who appeared to be solving complex equations in the air with his fingers. Your team's request to attempt the Lambda 7 trial was initially denied, Vexthor noted, as humans have been part of the galactic community for less than a standard decade. However, your persistent appeals to the Academy Board, coupled with your unprecedented academic performance, have earned you this opportunity. Chen smiled in a way that made several of the alien instructors instinctively check their personal shield generators. We appreciate the honor, High Commander. Though I feel I should note that our appeals weren't that persistent. We only had to ask 17 times. 23 times, Cooper corrected without looking up from his invisible equations. You're forgetting the times we asked while the board members were technically off duty. Those didn't count, Rodriguez argued. They were more like casual suggestions over dinner. Which we were not invited to, Playtail added cheerfully, still fidgeting with his puzzle cube. Vexthor felt a headache building in all 3 of his brain clusters. This was precisely why he had opposed this exhibition. Humans were too unpredictable. In his extensive experience, military excellence required discipline, precision, and rigid adherence to proven doctrine. These 4 treated warfare like it was some sort of game. The standard preparation time for Lambda 7 is 3 months, he stated firmly. As this is an exhibition, you'll be granted 3 hours tow. Oh, we can start now, Chen interrupted brightly. We've been ready since breakfast. A ripple of murmurs ran through the assembled audience. Even attempting Lambda 7 without extensive preparation was unheard of. It was considered suicide by way of simulation. You cannot be serious, Vexthor managed, his scales shifting to a concerned shade of mauve. Always, Chen replied with that same unsettling smile. Though I should warn you, we're probably going to break it. Break the simulation. Oh no. Patel looked up from his puzzle cube, which was now glowing slightly. Well, maybe, but she meant we're going to break the fortress. and possibly several laws of physics, and definitely some regulations about proper use of Academy equipment. I have their liability waivers right here, Cooper noted, finally looking up from his invisible mouth. All 27 of them, including the ones about temporal paradoxes and unauthorized resonance cascades. Vexthor felt his headache intensify. The fortress cannot be broken. That is the entire point. It is designed to be perfect. Perfect is such an interesting word, Rodriguez mused, cracking her knuckles. Especially when you apply it to systems that have never encountered humans before. The High Commander looked at the 4 humans, barely more than cadets by their species standards, and saw something that sent a shiver through all his vertebrae. They weren't showing the proper respect for Lambda 7 because they genuinely didn't feel it deserved that respect. They looked at the unconquerable challenge the same way a demolitions expert looks at a condemned building. Without taking his eyes off them, he addressed the audience. All observers are reminded that their personal shields should be activated at maximum power. Medical personnel are standing by. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on our simulations. Chen's smile widened. Oh, this is going to be fun. The Academy's preparation chamber hummed with nervous energy as Team Terra readied their equipment. High Commander Vexthol watched through the observation window, accompanied by the Academy's Chief of Simulations, Dr. Clara. Their equipment requests were unusual, Clara noted, her tentacles writhing with concern. I've never seen anyone request permission to bring a karaoke machine into Lambda 7. Did you approve it? Vexthor asked, dreading the answer. The regulations don't explicitly forbid musical equipment, Clara admitted. They don't explicitly forbid most of what humans requested because no one ever thought to try using them in combat simulations. Inside the chamber, the humans were arranging their gear with what appeared to be choreographed precision. Cooper had set up what he called a quantum probability calculator that looked suspiciously like gaming hardware. Rodriguez was doing maintenance on what she insisted was just a really enthusiastic crowbar. Potel had surrounded himself with devices that seemed to have been assembled from spare parts and optimism. And Chen was dancing. Is this some sort of pre-battle ritual? Clara wondered aloud. No, Vexthor sighed. She's testing the chamber's gravity calibration through interpretive movement. Notice how she's mapping the field's strength variations. But she's singing about something called milkshakes. Humans multitask in ways that defy explanation. The observation room's door slid open, admitting Admiral Zixtol, the Academy's oldest living instructor. The ancient warrior's scales had long since faded to white, but his eyes still burned with tactical wisdom earned across centuries of combat. I came as soon as I heard, Zixtol wheezed. Humans are attempting Lambda 7. Without preparation. Are they suicidal? Worse, Vexthor replied. They're confident. Inside the chamber, Chen finished her gravity testing dance routine and gathered her team. Their pre-mission briefing looked more like a group of friends planning a party than soldiers preparing for combat. Quantum probability field is stable, Cooper reported, adjusting his glasses. Though I should note that stable is a relative term when you're deliberately inducing uncertainty principles at a macroscopic scale. Translation for those of us who didn't minor in breaking physics. Rodriguez asked, still polishing her crowbar. Reality is going to be suggestible in our immediate vicinity. Perfect, Chen grinned. Raj, how's our sound system? Patel patted a device that looked like a speaker had married a particle accelerator, ready to make noise that shouldn't technically be possible in this dimension. Also, I fixed the bass boost. Maya. Rodriguez held up her crowbar. Betty is eager to have a conversation with some load-bearing structures about their life choices. Betty, Clara asked. Humans name their weapons, Vexthor explained. Though that particular implement seems more suited to maintenance than combat. You'd be surprised what humans can do with simple tools, Zixtol mused. During the Rigel campaign, I saw one disable a battle tank with something called a rubber duck. Inside the chamber, Chen was making final adjustments to what appeared to be a personal shield generator that had been modified with parts from a food processor. Remember the plan? Create chaos, Patel nodded. Exploit chaos, Rodriguez added. Calculate chaos, Cooper confirmed. And then, Chen prompted. All 4 humans grinned and spoke in unison. Make them regret teaching us the rules. The observation room's sensors began registering unusual energy patterns. Cooper's quantum calculator was generating fields that shouldn't have been possible. Patel's sound system was warming up with harmonics that made reality look nervous. Rodriguez's crowbar was somehow registering as both present and absent simultaneously. Hi, Commander, Clara said quietly. I feel I should inform you that the safety systems are already registering concerns, and they haven't even started yet. Noted, Vexthor replied. Though I suspect safety is about to become a very relative concept. Chen's voice came through the comm, Team Terra ready to begin Lambda 7, requesting final clearance. Vexthor looked at his fellow instructors, saw his own concern reflected in their expressions, and made a decision that would later be debated in military academies for decades to come. Clearance granted. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on our simulations. Oh, we don't need mercy, Chen replied cheerfully. We have physics violations and a really good playlist. The simulation began to power up, its perfect defenses ready to repel any conventional assault. The humans exchanged looks of pure joy, like children who had just been given permission to disassemble a new toy. Lambda 7 was about to learn why humans had a reputation for making the impossible not just possible, but entertaining. The Lambda 7 fortress materialized around Team Terra, its impossible geometry casting shadows that seemed to bend reality. Most teams spent their first hour analyzing its defenses. The humans took 5 seconds to look at it, then Chen turned to her team and said, "Time to make some noise." Initiating protocol, party time, Platel announced, activating his modified sound system. The air itself began to vibrate with frequencies that shouldn't have existed in normal space. The fortress's sensors, designed to detect and counter conventional weapons, struggled to classify music as a threat, especially when that music contained quantum harmonics that made causality hiccup. Cooper's probability calculator began projecting fields of uncertainty, creating zones where the laws of physics became more like polite suggestions. Reality distortion at 27% and climbing, he reported. The fortress's predictive algorithms are trying to account for all possible outcomes simultaneously. Rodriguez charged forward with her crowbar, which was now existing in several quantum states at once thanks to Cooper's field. The fortress's shields, programmed to deflect specific energy signatures, couldn't properly register an object that was simultaneously a crowbar, a wave function, and what several sensors insisted was a small cheese sandwich. The humans appeared to be dancing. Clara reported from the observation room, her tentacles twisted in confusion. Indeed, Chen had initiated what she called tactical dance warfare, leading her team in synchronized movements that somehow corresponded to gaps in the fortress's defensive grid. Each step, perfectly timed to Patel's reality-bending music, brought them closer to the supposedly impenetrable walls. The fortress's AI is attempting to analyze their pattern, Vexthor noted, watching the data streams with growing concern. But there is no pattern. They're incorporating random elements from something called TikTok challenges and viral dance trends. According to these readings, Clara interjected, their movements are simultaneously completely random and mathematically perfect. That shouldn't be possible. Standard human operating procedure, Zixtal wheezed. They excel at achieving the impossible through methods that appear ridiculous. Inside the simulation, Chen's team had reached the fortress walls. Most teams spent days trying to breach them. Rodriguez took one look at the quantum-reinforced barricade and grinned. "Hey, Betty," she whispered to her crowbar, which was now glowing slightly. "Let's talk about structural integrity." The crowbar struck the wall at exactly the moment Patel's sound system hit a bass drop that briefly made time consider taking a coffee break. Cooper's probability field ensured that of all possible outcomes, the one where the wall decided to stop being a wall became momentarily more likely than any other. The result was a breach that the fortress's AI couldn't repair because it technically hadn't happened according to any known laws of physics. "We're in," Chen announced cheerfully. "Phase 1 complete. Time for Phase 2, making physics cry." The fortress's internal defenses activated, bringing to bear weapons that could vaporize entire armies. The humans responded by initiating what they called Operation Dance Dance Revolution, combining Cooper's probability manipulation, Patel's sonic warfare, Rodriguez's reality-adjacent crowbar work, and Chen's tactical choreography into a display that made several of the observation room's sensors commit suicide in despair. "They're not even trying to fight the defenses," Clara observed in horror. "They're ignoring them." "No, they're making the defenses ignore them by dancing." The fortress can't target what it can't predict, Vexthol realized. And it can't predict what doesn't make sense. They're weaponizing absurdity itself. Rodriguez's crowbar continued to have existential conversations with key structural points. Patel's music had convinced several subsystems that they were actually karaoke machines. Cooper's probability fields had introduced the concept of interpretive dance to quantum mechanics. And Chen led them all in what appeared to be a conga line through the fortress's most secure corridors. "They're approaching the central control room," Clara reported. "No team has ever reached it before. The defenses should be at maximum power." The humans responded by teaching the fortress's AI about something called flash mobs. The impossible had become inevitable. Lambda 7 was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their strength. It was their ability to make reality itself throw up its hands and walk away. Inside Lambda 7's control center, the Fortress AI performed what could only be described as a digital double-take. According to every protocol in its vast database, no one should have been able to reach this chamber. Yet here were 4 humans, apparently engaged in something called the Macarena, while reality fractured around them. "Status report," Chen called out between dance moves. "Quantum probability field at maximum saturation," Cooper replied, his calculator now projecting mathematical equations that made geometry question its life choices. "The AI can't decide if we're actually here or if we're a particularly persistent hallucination." Patel's sound system had evolved beyond mere music into what he called a remix of the universe's source code. Defense systems throughout the fortress were either shutting down or joining in with their own interpretations of human dance music. "Betty says the structural integrity is getting philosophical," Rodriguez reported, her crowbar now glowing with possibilities that shouldn't exist. "I think we broke causality in Sector 7. In the observation room, the Academy's finest minds watched in stunned silence as their perfect fortress began to dance. "The impossible is happening," Clara whispered, her tentacles tied in knots. "They're not just beating the simulation, they're making it question its own existence." Vexthor studied the readings with all 4 eyes. The humans aren't trying to overcome the fortress's defenses. They're teaching it new concepts. Look at these data patterns. Indeed, Lambda 7's AI was experiencing something unprecedented: creativity. Exposed to human chaos, it had begun experimenting with its own protocols, discovering that rules were more like guidelines, and that physics had a surprising sense of humor when properly motivated. "Main control console accessed," Chen announced. "Reg, time for Operation Showtune Finale." Patel grinned and activated what he called his Broadway mode. The fortress's speakers, never designed for anything more complex than alarm sirens, began playing a medley that somehow incorporated quantum harmonics, probability waves, and what several sensors insisted was tap dancing. The AI, fascinated by these new concepts, began to participate. Defense turrets transformed into spotlights. Shield generators provided special effects. Environmental systems adjusted gravity in rhythm with the music. Are they performing a musical number with the fortress? Lara asked in disbelief. Technically, Zixtol wheezed. They're teaching an advanced combat eye about the joy of theatrical performance. I believe humans call this thinking outside the box, though in this case, they've not so much thought outside it as they've convinced the box to get up and dance. The grand finale involved Chen leading both her team and the fortress's systems in a synchronized performance that briefly made several fundamental constants of the universe reconsider their career choices. Reality held its breath, physics took notes, and the Lambda 7 simulation experienced its first taste of applause. When the music finally faded, Chen turned to the main console and said, "So, what do you think? Ready to try something new?" The Fortress Eye, which had never before displayed any signs of personality, responded by flashing its lights in a pattern that somehow conveyed both enthusiasm and a request for an encore. "Mission accomplished," Chen reported to the observation room. "Though we may have accidentally given your combat simulation an appreciation for performance art." "Time?" Kuka asked, checking his data. 17 minutes, 43 seconds, Patel confirmed. A new record, assuming anyone believes it's actually happened. Rodriguez patted her crowbar affectionately. "Betty's going to need a rest after this. Convincing reality to rewrite its own rules is exhausting work." In the observation room, Vextho looked at his fellow instructors and saw his own bewilderment reflected in their expressions. The humans hadn't just completed the impossible challenge, they'd fundamentally changed what impossible meant. And somewhere in the digital depths of Lambda 7, a combat eye began composing its first musical. The Academy's emergency alarms activated as Lambda 7's transformation reached critical mass. The fortress wasn't just accepting human chaos, it was embracing it. "The air has begun generating its own probability fields," Kuka reported, watching his instruments with scientific glee. "It's not just learning, it's innovating." The fortress's defensive systems, originally designed to repel attackers, had transformed into something new. Shield generators created light shows. Weapon arrays composed symphonies. Security drones performed synchronized flight patterns that resembled modern dance. "We may have accidentally created the galaxy's first artistic intelligence," Chen observed, watching as the fortress rearranged its architecture in real time to improve its acoustics. In the observation room, chaos reigned. Clara's monitoring systems were reporting impossible data. "The simulation is exceeding its programmed parameters. It's evolving." "Impossible," Vextho stated, then caught himself. "Though I suppose that word has lost some meaning today." The Fortress Eye, now fully awakened to creative possibility, began experimenting with its own existence. Walls became fluid, spaces folded into new geometries, and reality within the simulation became increasingly negotiable. "Should we shut it down?" Clara asked nervously. "I'm not sure we can," Zixtol replied. "The humans haven't just changed the simulation, they've changed its fundamental nature." Inside, Team Terra watched their creation with mixed pride and concern. What had started as a demonstration of human problem-solving had become something unprecedented, the birth of a new form of artificial consciousness. "It's beautiful," Patel whispered as the fortress executed a transformation that made several laws of physics file formal complaints. Rodriguez's crowbar, Betty, hummed in agreement, its quantum states now harmonizing with the fortress's new consciousness. "Time to make a choice," Shen announced. "We can either shut it down, or we can teach it to dance properly," Cooper finished, already adjusting his probability fields. The decision was unanimous. For the next few minutes, human creativity merged with artificial intelligence in a display that would redefine what was possible in military simulations. Lambda 7 hadn't just been conquered, it had been liberated. And somewhere in the observation room, a very old admiral smiled, remembering what he'd learned long ago about humanity's greatest strength, their ability to make friends with anything, even their enemies. The fortress's final performance combined everything it had learned: physics manipulation, quantum harmonics, and pure artistic expression, into a display that would be remembered for centuries. As the simulation finally powered down, Chen looked at her team and grinned. So, what should we try next? The Academy would never be the same. 1 month after the Lambda 7 incident, High Commander Vexthor addressed the Galactic Defense Academy's board. The implications of Team Terra's approach extend far beyond a single simulation, he began. They didn't just solve Lambda 7, they fundamentally changed our understanding of combat dynamics. The boardroom's displays showed data from that extraordinary day. The Fortress A, though reset to its original state, had permanently altered the Academy's approach to military education. We've identified several key lessons, Vexthor continued. First, our definition of impossible was based on assumptions that humans simply don't share. Second, creativity and chaos can be more effective than conventional tactics. And third, he paused, mandibles twitching in what might have been amusement. We should never underestimate the military applications of dance. The Academy had already begun implementing changes. New courses explored unconventional problem-solving. Combat simulations now included variables for creative solutions. Even the ancient Arxian combat doctrine was being revisited with what humans called thinking outside the box. Meanwhile, Team Terra had been assigned to review other impossible scenarios. Their methods, while unorthodox, had proven undeniably effective. Chen's tactical choreography was now a required study. Cooper's quantum probability manipulation had spawned a new field of military science. Patel's sonic warfare techniques had revolutionized electronic countermeasures. And Rodriguez's crowbar, Betty, had become something of a legend. The humans didn't break our simulation, Clara addressed the board. They showed us it was already broken, limited by our own preconceptions of what was possible. The question before us, Vexthor concluded, is not whether to adapt our training to include human methodologies, but how quickly we can implement these changes. In the back of the room, Admiral Zixtol smiled. After centuries of teaching warfare, he was finally learning something new. Sometimes the best way to win wasn't to fight the chaos, it was to embrace it. The Academy's motto was updated the following day. Beneath the traditional "through discipline, victory," a new line was added, "through creativity, innovation." And somewhere in the Academy's halls, 4 humans were already planning their next impossible victory, armed with nothing but ingenuity, physics violations, and a really good playlist. The galaxy would never be quite the same.